twice a month. Glad to jump on and talk about some of our feedback from our community in terms of questions. Very welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you. And it looks like the questions that we mostly have are relating to 401k plans. There's a lot of people that are trying to analyze 401ks. 401ks are under some heavy scrutiny across the board right now. So we're going to dive into an initial question that we had. Somebody was asking about measuring against 401k plans and other investments. I assume they're talking about what we primarily talk about, you and I regularly, which is the alternative to 401ks, which is using an asset-based approach, properly designed cash value life, and using it for specific purposes that I know we'll dive into in this discussion and answering this question. But the question that was posed was, do we have a calculator or software that measures against 401k plans and other investments, particularly in retirement? And this is from one of our audience members. Appreciate the question. I know, Barry, you use specific calculations quite often when you're demonstrating comparing 401ks to other, mainly the ultimate asset, and I know we're going to jump into. So
Yeah. I use what's called truth concepts. You can go to truthconcepts.com. There's specific financial calculators for crunching the numbers, looking at side by side comparisons. There's a video that we did a little while ago where we compared stock market investments specifically to high cash value whole life insurance. We won't get into the weeds right now. Go check out the video. But what we concluded is that you would have to earn about a 9.5% rate of return every single year in your stock market investment, in your 401k, in your IRA to net what you would earn in a properly structured high cash value whole life policy. Now just think about that for a minute. 9.5% every year for the rest of your life, never having a losing year. Steve, it's an impossibility what I just described in the market. You can't do that every year in the market.
So let's walk through that. Let's walk through that calculation. Since this is a calculator question, when you go about applying your mathematical abilities to that question, how do you come up with you said it was 9.5 or
Yeah.
percent year. Some market people will say that's very likely, which is completely crazy. We talk about that all the time, but because think about it, you're going to have down years. So let's say you had a negative 20% one year and 20% the next, you're still behind, right? Because that basis goes down. So
Yeah.
How do you calculate that number?
Yeah. In that specific video, I used the best of the best index out there, which is the S&P 500. And think about the S&P 500. They're choosing the top 500 stocks, and some years the stocks that were in there one year, they get booted out the next year because they don't meet the top 500 stocks. So they're always looking at the best of the best. Those were the numbers that I used. I might look at a 10-year, a 20-year, a 30-year look back. Steve, you and I were at a life insurance summit last week, and we saw several of these examples where they were looking back 50 years, 80 years, and still life insurance overall was outperforming the market because of the guarantees, because of tax-free. So we would encourage people to look at that video. So S&P 500, yeah, it's a great index, the best of the best. We're not going to go in and find these stock market investments that are just terrible all the time to run the comparison. We're using the S&P 500.
So you use the actual index and you use your truth concepts calculator, plug in the calculations and do a side by side, and you take your 20-year, or you take a swath of the time, right? So you take 20-year average, and you could take different time periods and see how it does, right? It's not like you're going to cherry pick like the worst 20 years in history and compare it to a policy. But and I've seen you do it, so I'm just leading the question because you can take any 20-year period, plug in the actual data, show what the actual returns are, and then compare that to, say, an illustration and the guaranteed component, or even, if you're gonna, I think it's fair to add the dividends in. How do you do it when you compare? Like, what math are you using?
Yep. Yep. So side by side, like you mentioned, and I'm taking the illustration IRR, the internal rate of return. What is the policy going to generate through someone's lifetime, age 85, age 90, etc., their health today, their age today? Most people that I'm working with are earning 5%, 5.25% tax free rate of return. So when you look at that equation and then you add in the cost of term insurance, because there's something very popular out there we don't agree with, but it's really popular: buy term and invest the difference. So if you're invested in the market, you're still purchasing term insurance for 20 or 30 years, and maybe you're renewing it again at that point. So I'm taking in those costs. What is it costing you for the term insurance? And at the end of the day, how does the whole life policy perform? Now, I will say this: maybe for the first 5 to 7 years, depends again on your age and the amount that you're funding into a policy. Yeah, you might see the S&P 500 outperform those earlier years of the life insurance policy. But mid to later years, usually not the case. And here's why: a life insurance policy is paying you two ways. Number one, you're getting a guaranteed growth rate, guaranteed crediting rate. You have a column of cash value in the illustration that says guaranteed. Okay. I've gone the rounds with this with some people. It is guaranteed cash value. And
Right.
that guaranteed cash value grows every single year. There's never a losing year. If you look at any 10-year time frame of the stock market, maybe I should say most 10-year time frames of the stock market, within those 10-year time frames, there's usually 2 to 4 losing years. With cash value insurance, there's never a losing year. You also make money with a dividend. Now, dividends are not guaranteed. We want to be clear about that. But the companies that we use, they've been in business. I'll just cite a few here: 120 years, 165 years, 179 years. Okay, these are companies that have withstood the test of time. They're not taking massive risks on their investment portfolio. So during those time frames, they've paid dividends. They're not skipping dividends every couple years. No, they have this track record where they've paid dividends every year for over 120, 150, 170 years. Those dividends get added to your cash value. Now they're compounding right on that growth curve, never losing money. And that's why we see the whole life illustration, Steve, mid to later years outperforming stock market investments. There is no volatility in a policy.
Yeah, and so you have continual compounding and those kind of things, where the compounding is actually being hindered by the market volatility, right? When you're dealing with strictly market-based investments. So your calculator, Truth Concepts, and you said people can go there. If there's any professionals listening, they can go to Truth Concepts. They can look that up. There's training. Um, but you will plug that in. So you take that average, it'll give the rate of return, and then you do a side by side. You plug illustration numbers into the calculation when you do,
Yeah,
basically uploading those
exactly.
numbers. I just want people
Yeah,
to, I want people to understand that with this question too, that this is a mathematical process where the actual illustration numbers are going in and you're comparing them to actual returns in the market over a period. So in answer to the question, yes, definitely the truth concepts and calculator is one. There's tons of people dreaming up calculators right now, by the way, with AI. It's easy to build a calculator. Truth Concepts has been around 20, probably 20 years at this point, hasn't it, Barry? I know they've been around a long time.
pretty close. Yeah.
And
And Steve, you know, we heard this over and over again at the Life Insurance Summit: the 4-letter word. Okay, there's a 4-letter word that people need to realize, because look, if you're running the calculations on AI like Steve's talking about, you might be putting in a consistent 7% return. Hey, AI, Chat GPT, Grok, whoever you're using, Claude, what if I earn a 7% return on my portfolio? The problem with that is the 4-letter word. And the 4-letter word is math. The market does not earn 7% every single year. And we
Right.
saw it proven out last week at the insurance conference. Math, you have to look at the actual math, not the average math, but the actual math. And there's a huge difference between an average rate of return and an actual rate of return. And it comes down to the 4-letter word math.
And we've talked about that a lot in our discussions, the illusion of the average returns. And that one seems to get a lot of people, captures a lot of people. They think, well, if I can get an average, this is what it's going to be. And they're not thinking about the actual return they're getting. And averages can be very deceiving because of the fact that it kind of washes all the numbers in a sort of mind numbing kind of way, right? I mean, and we could do an example of that. We could do 10 years, we could do -10, we could do 5%, we could do a 15%, -5%, and then come up with an average that looked pretty okay to people. And yet that was a very volatile ride the entire time. And then you would do the
Yeah.
comparison, right? So you could do the comparison in that case, and then you could compare a steady 5% tax-free growth, whatever it is, very conservatively. And that's a lot of what the math question is. So for you guys jumping on, the yes, there are absolute math questions that come into play, and the 4-letter word, the magic word, math is very applicable when it comes to seeing what you can actually get. And we always encourage people, they can look at their own numbers. They can jump on with Barry in a one-to-one and actually look and do a side by side with your own history if you wanted to. I mean, you can get as analytical as you want to get with that. So,
Yeah, we like looking at that. Yeah.
so I
Yeah, we
appreciate the
like looking at
question.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, great question. And one thing else I want to share, what does the math mean to you? You're listening, what does the math mean to you? Because the goal is outcome. The goal should be income. The goal isn't necessarily net worth per se. You could have a ton of money locked up and no income. So we're looking at the math. I just did a video this morning on how you can get more tax-free income in your future. Well, the market-based stuff that we're talking about, 401ks and IRAs, it's all tax deferred. So the question is, will taxes be higher in the future? By how much? And the next question is, well, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to pay those future taxes if all of your money is tax deferred? We're talking about not only consistent guaranteed growth on a life insurance portfolio, we're also talking about tax free money. So the math, it's important. We want you to visualize what is your future outcome with the things we're talking about, because ultimately, having the income, having the tax free money, it does several things: peace of mind, family legacy, certainty, less worry, right? We all want those things in our lives, but unfortunately, too many people, Steve, they're not looking at the math. They're ignoring it. They're
Yeah.
saying, I trust my financial advisor. Oh, the market's going to do what it's going to do. I'm going to have this fat 401k when I retire. So what? You might think that, but what does the math say? What do the tax consequences say? And are you going to have the peace of mind, the predictability, the certainty that you want in your future? What we're saying is pull some of this into your portfolio. You don't have to stop doing what you're doing in the market, but pull some of what we're saying into your portfolio to have a better future outcome.
And you said something important. You kind of triggered my estate planning legal background with some of the questions um, now I'm losing my train of thought here, but the oh yeah, you said better for you. It's also it's the tax hit is not just for you now, it's also for future generations, right? Because if you try to pass a 401k, we were just at the event And they talked about how the Secure Act, which has been a change in the laws around 401ks and IRAs, it's really made it a horrible asset in many respects, just from the standpoint that you can't stretch the tax burden for more than 10 years now if you pass that to a non-spouse. So let's say you have a big IRA and it goes to one of your kids. They're going to have to take all that income within 10 years. And that's just a huge tax bomb. And it's just a really terrible impact when it comes to, the tax hit that your money's going to take. So that's another case to be made, right? Where you could take a portion of that, diversify it into a tax-free bucket and have it flow tax-free to loved ones. It's also really an important estate planning component when you talk about liquidity. Like, you've got something tied up that, you don't really want to remove from the account because of the taxes. Well, what if you need liquidity? So then do you want to have to cash it out and take a tax hit, right there for your beneficiaries to pay all the bills? So you got this liquidity thing that's going on as well. So again, you got to kind of look at all assets when you're measuring 401ks versus tax-free assets, the ultimate asset. You got to kind of look at all sides of it and look at it for your beneficiaries as well. Because there's a chance that you might, if it's a large retirement account, you might not spend it all, and then your beneficiaries have to deal with it. So,
Steve, people are moving to different countries to avoid paying tax. Okay. They're leaving the United States to not pay tax. We're saying you don't have to do that. You, you can stay living right here. Just allocate a portion of your portfolio into a different asset class. The asset class of high cash value whole life insurance guarantees liquidity, tax free money. You don't have to start looking at, moving to South America or some country to get away from the tax. Now, there might be some that want to do that, but we're saying you don't have to do that. There are other ways. And look, this is contrarian, right? People might say, this just isn't conventional. We don't want people going down the conventional path because historically speaking, it does not work. It's like we're saying to people, the bridge is out. If you keep going down that path, the bridge is out. I've seen it for 25 years. People coming to me saying, Barry, I've got my 401k, I've got Social Security. That's what my financial planner told me to do. That's what the HR department told me to do at my job. I don't have the money that I thought I was going to have. And oh, I'm not only paying all the tax on my 401k, they're charging me tax on my Social Security because I'm getting in more money and I'm this provisional income. I got to now pay tax on my Social Security too. So
yeah.
there's a better way. Bring it down. There's a better way.
Well,
Okay. We
right.
want people to understand you don't have to follow the traditional financial planning advice to create wealth because the bridge is out. It generally does not work for people.
Right. One of the most compelling things that they talked about at the event was just that the youth, when we're in a low tax environment right now, we're in a historically low tax environment. And that even the youth who are working and getting a 401k and, if they're getting a match, even the, this one really clicked for me. They're penalizing their future in many ways by taking a deferral right now. So they're in a low tax environment. They probably have low income right now. And by the way, this is what the IRS knows very well as well, as well. So what are they doing then? They're taking this deferral. Everybody's on board. The CPA's on board. Everybody's on board. Let's go ahead and get you this, this reduction in your taxes right now, even though it's pretty small. Probably most of the time it's a very small reduction, right? Especially because of the limits and everything. So they're kicking the can down the road. At the event, they were saying, look, even young people that are getting a match, try to see if your employer will do a Roth at least and do
Yeah.
a match for
Yeah.
that. Because of the fact that if you look at the long game, how is a young professional person that's getting 401k money helping themselves by taking that deduction? it just really clicked for me. They're not helping themselves because they're penalizing their future by doing that, because they're going to be in a much bigger tax bracket,
Right.
most likely. They're going to be in a higher tax environment. I mean, if you look at it, the whole history of tax rates, we're in a very low tax rate right now. They're in a low bracket, probably even if they're making a pretty decent income, they're in a lower bracket that they're most likely going to be in down the road. So the question is, how do we want them to penalize their future? And that's why it's so important. That's why this is such an important question. And I'm glad it's being asked by a lot of people in our community. 401ks are a hot topic for a lot of reasons, because people are trying to do retirement planning and they're already wary. So many people are already wary of the issues with 401ks. I mean, you have to be. I mean, and if you've been around for a while, like you and I, you know, we're convinced, because I've seen how cumbersome they are, for one. I mean, just to get any money out of them whatsoever, if you need it, it's just a pain. I mean, it's very you have to repay very specifically. It's very cumbersome. It's very technical. That most professionals don't even really understand them. When they changed the Secure Act, it took a long time for even attorneys and experts to kind of figure out what the heck was going on with it. And we know how that goes as well. So
Yeah. Steve, and we heard this phrase, and I've used this phrase for years, but we heard it reiterated at the event. Having a 401k or an IRA, a 403b, a TSP, any government qualified plan, you are in a partnership with the
mm,
government.
yeah.
Do you want that partnership?
Yeah, that was a terrific point. Actually, they gave an example of a guy coming into one of the guy's offices with $1 million 401k, and really excited. He was super stoked about how well he did. And the advisor, that was talking and led the discussion, just said, "Well, can I borrow that statement for a second?" Wrote the IRS on it and said, "I just want you to know that you're partners with the IRS on this." And kind of took the person back a little bit. And then he made it worse. The advisor said, and also this is a very particular kind of partner, because of the fact that your partner gets to decide how much of your account they actually get. Meaning the tax rates, whenever you start making the withdrawals, are going to be whatever the government decides at that point. So it's
Yeah,
genius.
what a punishment. Yeah, crazy.
It's a genius thing. We think, and there's a healthy dose of skepticism on our channel for good reasons, because we want to empower you in your wealth building, your finances in unconventional ways to get around what the roadblocks in the system, right? That's really why we're here. And so there's a healthy dose of skepticism, but let's face it, from the IRS standpoint, from the government standpoint, it's genius. I mean, it's pure
Yeah,
genius. And if you don't see it, don't get mad at the messengers, right? Because
yeah,
we might get a few
yeah,
comments on
yeah.
this one, but that's completely fine. And if we get some financial advisors that want to comment on it, I mean, I don't know how you argue with that. I'd love to have somebody try to argue with me on that one, because it is what it is. I mean, the account is what it is. The red tape around it is what it is. So well, you just got to take it for what it is. It's a deferred account that has a lot of uncertainty and a lot of red tape and regulations around it. And if you're going to rely solely on that, then you just kind of have to see what happens. But it's not going to be what you could do charting a course down the road for the largest
That's right.
possible, for the best possible situation that you could have, as you talk to clients about often, I know, Barry. So,
Yeah. Steve, two questions we could leave people with. Do you want to pay those higher taxes? And the second question is, what are you going to do about it? We'll let that soak in. Let that sink in,
let
because
that
there are solutions.
let that marinate a little bit in the community. We're going to be doing these every other Thursday, these discussions. We want you to feel free to submit questions to us in advance. And we also are intending to set up a call-in function that would work in our technical environment. So we have to kind of see what we can do in terms of YouTube and everything with that. But obviously, that's going to be a benefit to you guys if you can call on the fly and get questions answered. So keep the questions coming. I'd like to keep having you join us, and feel free to bring questions. That's the whole purpose of these times. So thank you, Barry. Everybody, maybe mull that over, this discussion. There's other videos. The demo that Barry's talking about is in one of our recent long form discussions. You kind of look through those and look at it. There was a number of Sacred Cow, Wall Street, Sacred Cow videos, and I believe it was in those that we tackled this question, among others. So check those out. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next video.